citizens of the modern world. And so there was this moment in the middle of the 18th century, where many reformers would be, of course, this is not Polish problem, this is Enlightenment. And Enlightenment, which was European phenomenon, was inspiring many, many brilliant people everywhere, and also in Poland. And so we have these reformers who would use theater to educate new citizens, to create kind of citizens of the modern Europe. Because as I told you a few times, we Poles were at the time very backward. So we were actually farmers, where some wealthy magnates would rule over a huge area of the land. And so this was nothing really open to modern industry, to modern citizenship at all. And we have this political system which was very conservative and very impractical and very corrupted in a way. We call this free election, but this free election was to give opportunity to very clever and smart, wealthy men to corrupt the system. As I said, it was enough to find one person who would block even very, very modernized attempt to legitimize new rule, new law in Poland. So this was really problematic. And maybe the most problematic was who was leading these reforms. This was Polish King Stanisław August II Poniatowski. Unfortunately, he was introduced to Polish throne by the Russian Empress Catherine II. And so his good intentions, very much supported by very reformers, was always made in this strange, bizarre context. He is following Russian orders. He is, of course, we know his history of not only following the Russian context, but also being sexually involved in kind of relationship, affair with Catherine II. But of course, we know her from the history. She was very open to sexual intercourse, so he was one of many. But still, this made him kind of prisoner of this strange context that even if he is proposing something positive, we cannot trust him because this is Russian supported always. So he is a Russian emissary in Polish. And so some people, just like theater people, would be very much supporting him. He was introducing this new law of religious tolerance. At the time, of course, this is Enlightenment, so we have many examples around Europe that this was a really discussed issue. As I told you before, we had at the time in Poland many religious minorities. They were just like not persecuted, there was not violence against them at the beginning, but now something different happened. From the one side, you have reformers to try to reform Poland, and they try to introduce religious tolerance. But today we know that this idea of religious tolerance actually was a very smart idea introduced to Polish wealthy citizens by Russians, because they knew that they would create a conflict. And so we have many evidences that this Russian emissaries here in Poland would try to erase a conflict, and this was their way to rule Poland. Just like today, we have kind of national, social, ideological conflict in Poland, and there are a lot of evidences that some Russians would be involved in firing, in killing this conflict. So this is the situation, and many Poles were opposing this Russian influence. Many wealthy citizens, especially owners of this land, these huge farms, very rich people, they were not happy with this change of the political system. They would lose control of political proceedings, so they tried to preserve their importance. And so, especially this new movement that was rising in Poland had this very dangerous dimension, not only Catholic, but especially nationalistic. Because of this Russia, we have always Russia as a neighbor who is making us in danger. I was talking before about Kochanowski, who was calling to arms. Russians are coming. So in Poland, we are living all the time, even today. Nothing is different. The war is in Ukraine, of course, but we still feel this. The Russians, fucking Russians are coming. They are at the border. And so this is our Polish fate. We still live in this strange context. On one side we have Germans, who are also sometimes coming, and on the other side we have Russians. So we are living in the crossroads between all this powerful, and of course, if you are a powerful nation, you don't want to resolve your conflict on your own land. You go to the neighbor, and Poland was a fantastic area to solve the conflict. So whenever Russians and Germans and sometimes French, they had some conflicts, military, political, economical, they came to Poland to discuss and to beat each other, and of course, this destroying whatever culture, material culture we had. And so, in this complex situation, we have these very rich landowners who decided to oppose, and especially Russian influences, but not only Russian influences. So you will see here this Bar Confederation. They were coming to the very provincial town, very small town, you will see in a moment on the map. And so this would be association of Polish nobles. We call it, of course, as you remember, Szlachta in Poland. It's very difficult to translate in English. There is nothing like this in English society. This is not gentry. We call them nobles. To defend of course, they were in the right, because Russians were not only at the border. Russians actually were inside Polish lands. They would introduce Russian soldiers. There were politicians who were just like corrupting Polish politicians and government. So the Russians were here. And so first was, of course, very right and just idea. Let's remove Russians. Let's get rid of Russian influence. And of course, the symbol of this Russian influence was the lover of Katarina II, Polish king. So from this perspective, they hated this king. And so it's a very bad situation, because he was also the face of the reform. So this is tragedy of Poland. Next, against reforms attempting to limit the power of the wealthy magnates. The reformers tried to stop this liberum veto, this I don't agree situation during the parliamentary sessions. So, and also to stop this so-called free election, to get really the majority to decide, not one person blocking. But the most important issue appeared, and this is this smart Russian idea, reforms promoting religious tolerance. Suddenly, Polish people who would try to build national identity, they realized that church could be of huge help. Church does not help for nothing. They always look for something in return. This time, this national Catholic movement was really extremely homophobic, and first time with such a power was to introduce this idea of intolerance. We should be Polish Catholics. And so that's unfortunate decision actually blocked the reforms. We will be still peasant country for some time. And so, what happened here? Sorry. Okay, so as you can see here, now this blue arrow, this is the place Bar. We call this Bar Confederation because these wealthy landowners, they would meet here. This area is called Podole at the time. So as you can see, on the marginal land of Poland, modern Poland is just like here, this is modern Ukraine, so it's very far away, of course, because this was conspiracy. And for 4 years, they started to fight. As you can see, these light areas, these are areas of the major activity. So as you can see, they did not manage to activate whole Polish nation to support the idea of fighting the Russians. The Russians, of course, would introduce the soldiers, the army, and these are just like half amateurish, but the most tragical thing is that first, before they started to confront the Russian army, they started to fight with the army of Polish king. Polish king, he had Polish national royal army who was defending the Polish state, and these conspirators, they first decided to get rid of the king. First, they would fight. So this is actually brother with brother fighting. Fantastic for anybody who is enemy, just like Russians or Prussia later and Austria, to watch this. Let's kill them each other. And so that's how it started. Polish landowners created something like amateurish movement to fight regular Polish army. And of course, king who was fighting in good name for the reforms called Russia for help. And this is the end, because now you see the Confederators, they have right, because Russians are coming. And so, of course, they were just like sentenced to failure. Too powerful was Russia military. If they would not fight Polish army, probably there would be something more like a hope for Poles at the time. Maybe they would together get rid of Russia, but still, first they made very weak Polish soldiers. Regular royal army was actually not existing. And so, as you can see, very tragical situation. And here you got just like most characteristic image of these fighters. They are just like always at the top, introducing holy images. So the God is with them. And for Polish people, this idea of Catholic support is symbolized by the Holy Mother of Jesus. And so we have this most sacred images of the Mother Mary. She is always taking care of us. And of course, not much, because we are losing many battles, and this whole idea of resurrection, sometimes people call it the first Polish uprising, because in the 19th century we will have a series of uprisings to liberate Poland from these colonizers, because Poland will be partitioned between 3 different powerful nations, Austria, Prussia, and Russia. So this movement to get rid, for independence, we call it uprisings, this could be the first, and as all of them, the first failure. Next uprising would be even more disastrous, more people would be killed by Russians. This is the first such an event. And what result of this? Of course, first partition. This is, of course, the caricaturish image. You can see here Frederick the Great of Prussia, Maria Theresa from Austria, and Catherine II from Russia, and they are just like splitting the map of Poland. Everybody takes a part of this, and here in the bones is a Polish king who is just like the big loser in this situation here. And so, as you can see, that's the result of the first partition. As you see, this yellow, Poland still is a country, but you see, this is the Austria part taken, this is the Russian part now, and here up is, on the north is the Prussia. So this light brown, light green, these are parts taken. This is still first partition. So we have still a Poland. This yellow, as you can see, is large. It's even, as you see, larger than Poland today. Poland today is just like in the middle, here a little bit on the west. But this area was still, this is in remembering of this Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. So part of this is of course Lithuania, but still as a Commonwealth we were much bigger than Lithuania or Poland today. After this first partition, things radically changed, and